Surely the adjective shining is redundant when attached to the word light. After all, what else does a light do? What can it do except shine? Surely there's no such thing as a light that doesn't shine. Well, Jesus, as we'll soon see, speaks of people who put their light under a bushel. Actually, that's our great danger, that though we are the light of the world, we do not shine. Christians are meant to radiate out to the nations, and yet somehow we manage not to shine. Not so with John the Baptist. He is described by Jesus as a shining light. From John chapter 5 and verse 33, he describes John like this. He says, "You have sent to John, and he has testified to the truth. Not that I accept human testimony, but I mention it that you may be saved. John was a lamp that burned and gave light." Or in the old King James Version, he was a burning and shining light. And you chose for a time to enjoy his light. So John is a shining light. How did he shine? What was the secret? Was it through his many talents? Because he was incredibly talented. Matthew chapter 11, verse 11, there Jesus calls him the most naturally gifted man on earth. Is that the way that he is a shining light? No, that's not why he shines. Did he shine because of his many achievements? Well, no, the very opposite. John shone by pointing away from himself entirely. In paintings which depict John, sometimes he's identified by his pointing finger, which is interesting. How do you point John out in a painting? Well, he's the one who's always pointing to Jesus. He's got the big long finger, who is always looking away from himself. Jesus tells us the secret of John's brilliance. Actually, in John chapter 1, it talks about how he testifies to the truth. That is the secret of his shining. John 1 verse 6, there came a man who was sent from God. His name was John. He came as a witness to testify concerning that light, so that through him all men might believe. He himself was not the light. He came only as a witness to the light. The true light that gives light to every man was coming into the world. So interesting. John is not the light, he's not the light, he's not the light. But in pointing to the light, he is a shining light, right? Because Jesus is the uncreated light of the world. John shines as he points away from himself to the true light, Jesus. John's light is not a light that draws attention to itself. Rather, his light spotlights the true light. John shows us all how we are meant to shine because we are all witnesses. Just as John is forever being described in John's Gospel as a witness, so Acts chapter 1 verse 8, we are witnesses. So what do we learn from John's example? We learn humility, actually. We learn that the way to shine is by not bigging ourselves up. So let me close with John's own self-appraisal, and may this be our appraisal of ourselves. We will shine out into the world when we forget about ourselves, when we point away from ourselves and point to Jesus. John chapter 1, verse 19. Here is John's testimony about himself. They asked him, "Are you the Christ?" Verse 20, he says, "I am not the Christ." "Well then, are you the prophet?" Verse 21, he answered, "No." "So who are you, John?" Verse 23, he says, "I'm the voice. I'm just a voice. Just a voice. The voice of one calling in the desert. Make straight the way for the Lord." Or verse 27, he says, "I am not worthy to untie Jesus' sandal straps." Or famously, John chapter 3 and verse 30, he says, "I must decrease. He must increase." How are we going to shine today? We're made to shine. Jesus has made us the light of the world. How are we going to shine? Well, forget about you shining. Forget about your light. He must increase. You must decrease. Get out of the way and make much of the light of the world, and watch as he dazzles the nations.